So to catch everybody up, a while back, Abusive Anti-Theist made a video wherein he stated that his favorite argument for atheism, and what he considered to be the best argument for atheism, was the argument from divine hiddenness. And I don't particularly like the argument from divine hiddenness for atheism so much as I like it for a refutation of Christianity. And by that I mean, if you switch out which God you're talking about, the effectiveness of that argument changes. And so I made a video where, still keeping with just talking about the Christian God, I postulated that possibly Inventor Gorilla's idea of who the Christian God is could undermine an argument from divine hiddenness, such as Abusive Anti-Theist likes, because Inventor Gorilla's idea of God, which seems very Calvinist, is that God is not an all-loving God and has an elect, chosen set of people that he's going to bring to heaven, and an elect, chosen set of people that are going to hell. So he's not all-loving for all people. And so that was just one little attack at the argument from divine hiddenness. But I asked Julian, a new YouTuber that I see with a lot of promise. His channel is JDelphiki42. I asked him, because he put on his channel page that he was on this other side of the argument from divine hiddenness, where he does not think that it holds its weight. I asked him to attack it with his style, to see if he could come up with some other reasons that the argument from divine hiddenness might be flawed. And to his credit, he did not take the same route as me, which was to say that if you switch out the God that you're talking about, that the results from that argument change significantly, because the definitions of God change from religion to religion. He didn't go there like I did. So he had 5 other objections to the argument from divine hiddenness. One was on the classic formulation of the argument, and the other 4 were from a more revised form of the argument. It's only been around for about 30, 40 years. So on the classic formulation, he attacks it such that he says, he says that you can't say that non-belief in God is rejection of God, because after you die, you'll be before God in judgment, and when you're looking right at God after you're dead, and it's just your spirit floating right in front of him, that you won't have any doubts as to the existence of God. To which I have to reply, because of my particular upbringing within Christianity, which was initially in the Assembly of God Church. Do you not believe that the grading that God does, your report card for your life, do you not believe that it begins with birth and then ends with death? Like, you think that people can do something like acknowledge the existence of God after they're dead, that kind of changes the scenario? Do you believe, like Mormons, that you can pray for dead people that might be in some other kind of nether plane of hell and get them elevated. Like, because it seems to me, if you're saying that when you die, you're going to know, it doesn't mean that when you were alive, you did know. And none of what I'm going to talk about here is going to be a complete refutation of his objections to the argument from divine hiddenness. I want to know more. You know, he made an 11-minute video, and I want more. I want more information here. I was taught as a very young child that, if you stubbed your toe and said fuck, that was going to weigh you down if you didn't repent of that before you died. And if you stubbed your toe, said fuck, and then fell into traffic and got hit by a car, that was a very bad thing. You always had to stay on your toes, as it were. And you always had to be mindful of the sin that you might be doing, because you had to, be in a repentant state and not let any of this sin go unforgiven. You have to ask for forgiveness of all these sins because they might weigh you down. There's this scorecard that starts at life, ends at death, and once you're dead, then judgment happens based on what happened in your life. So I really don't see how revelations that come to you after you're dead change what happens when you're alive. And I would agree that there is a difference between not believing in God's existence and rejecting God. But if you don't believe in God's existence and that is your basis for rejection, if the Christian God were to turn out to be true, would that be a good defense? Many Christians would say no. Okay, so that was the only thing that Julian had to say about the classic formulation of the argument. Then there was the Schellenberg Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt formulation that's come to popularity in the last few decades. So, objection number one from Julian. What I have to say to respond to your objection is, if you think that it naturally follows that relationships between people take time, so therefore God and your relationship with God takes time, and so you need some cleansing works, you need to do some good deeds to get closer to God. What I have to say to that is, from my upbringing in a different Christian methodology, we were taught that once you ask for forgiveness, at that instant, when the Holy Spirit comes in you, something magically bonds you to God. There's magic involved here. So I don't think that a lot of Christians would equate a relationship with a person that takes building trust and a rapport. I don't think they would say that it's the same as when you ask Jesus into your heart, because when that Holy Spirit comes over you, there is like something that, I guess, magically fast forwards your relationship to something that's better than something that you can get just by talking to people and making relationships with normal people. So yeah, not exactly a refutation of your argument. It's just I think your idea of the relationship with God taking time to build is not shared by all the people who are in the Christian faith, especially not the charismatic people. Okay, and your second objection. You said that non-belief doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with God. And this one threw me for a loop here. And when you said that, it reminded me of like when I have a video game and there are non-player characters. In MMO games, there's always like people you can talk to that aren't really real, and you know that they've been programmed. It's like an avatar of, and the program has this non-player character. You talk to it, and it has a set of answers. And I don't believe that that's a real person. You know, there are real people in the game, but I don't believe that those NPCs, those non-player characters, are real, because I know that they've been programmed to stand there and be there when I have to interact with them. But I know in my head that whatever they do was programmed by a human being at some point. All of the responses that they give me were decided by a human being. Now, if we leave the realm of video games and, you know, real people playing the video games and fake people that you find in there, just you're saying that if you don't believe in God, you can still have a relationship with God. Well, if I had an imaginary friend, and that's what I would call it if I didn't believe in God, but I was still trying to have a relationship with this God that I didn't believe in. I would think that I was imagining it, and I would have to realize that all of the reactions that this imaginary friend of mine had were projections from my own mind, you know, because I was the one imagining it. So all of the responses I get back are pretty much responses that I've told this imaginary friend to tell me. Just like you could program an avatar in a game to give you responses back, you know, in the way that you would want them to. So, I suppose you could have a relationship with something that you didn't believe in, but you were still trying to have a relationship with. Kind of reminds me of Wilson in the movie Castaway. And, you know, he drew a face and put like seaweed for hair and stuff on that volleyball, but really, well, on some level, he had to know that it wasn't a real person. And on some level, I wish they had named that movie Cast a Gay, because I like movies with dialogue. But back to your objections. Sorry I had to splice this. Crying kid had to attend to. Where was I? Your third objection. Non-resistant, rational non-belief is the best thing to check irrational belief. Where to go with this one? if you were one of the people that believed that faith was something that was required by Christianity or by another religion, that's what I would call the irrational belief point, where people just they have no other reason, that they can think of to believe, so they have to believe on faith if they're going to believe. And so rational, non-resistant non-belief, people that don't hate God, they just want to have a rational reason, those people make the arguments that keep the faith believers in check. And I suppose if you're going to make an argument like that, then it really does help your other argument, where you're basically saying that your relationship with God is based on works. You seem like a works kind of guy versus a faith kind of guy. And you think that the relationship with God has to be built instead of just magically happening right away. Not exactly the school that I was brought up in. And I can find quite a few verses in the Bible that speak about faith being a requirement rather than works, and then I can find, a bunch of verses that speak about works being required. So, Now, at this point, my refutation of the argument of divine hiddenness, it sounds a lot like what you're saying, is I personally am not afraid of the possibility of a God existing, because I see a lot of people as being fakers. Coming from charismatic churches, I saw a lot of speaking in tongues, rolling in the pews, backflips, and bouncing on, flopping on the ground like a fish, being slain in the spirit. All that stuff was happening in the churches that my mother would require me to attend, and I saw a lot of faking. And for me, if I'm using my rational mind, and your God did exist, and I'm standing next to all these other people that were doing all these things in that charismatic church, I'm not afraid of what's going to happen, because I think they were all faking, and what's going to happen when that God says, hey, what the hell were you guys doing down there? This guy right here, he called it. He said the emperor has no clothes. And all of you were like flopping like fishes and talking like babies, and none of that is real. None of that was a real connection with God, and it's a great big lie. So, I figure that if a God did exist, I would get rewarded for using my fucking brain, rather than lying about having a relationship with God, Now, your fourth objection for the divine hiddenness argument is saying that people have standards for evidence that don't follow logic, and they're all personal. And your example was Noel Plum 99 saying, well, God would have to put a force field around the earth and put it through the sun and bring it back to prove to him that that was God. And yeah, I see what you're saying here. That a lot of people have personal standards that they don't match each other. I know personally, if I saw a burning bush and heard a booming voice, I would be wondering who the fuck put some LSD in my Dr. Pepper, you know? That's what I would think. And if I didn't have the ability to recreate the experience the next day without LSD, if I went out to the same bush and it didn't catch on fire, it wouldn't be verifiable to me. You know, I'd have to have it be something that I could test over and over again. And then have other people verify it the same way. So, a lot of things that other people would accept, that being an example from Moses, but a lot of things other people would accept, I don't, and a lot of things that other people would accept, they wouldn't accept, and it's I actually can't think of a personal test for God that I would be willing to accept without other people being able to verify it. And like you say, everyone has these personal standards that are just outrageous. I can't think of a standard of evidence that isn't arbitrary and personal for testing God. And when I say that to myself, immediately it rings in my ears. If you can't think of something that is not personal and not arbitrary to test something, then that something is probably unfalsifiable. And if your God is unfalsifiable in that we can't think of a way to test your God that isn't personal or arbitrary, then why should we treat your God any different from any other unfalsifiable claim? Does the inability for anyone to have standards of evidence that aren't personal and arbitrary not undermine your other objections? Because you just argued in a previous objection that irrational belief, what I would call faith, but you're calling irrational belief, it's not necessary for someone to have a relationship with God. And irrational belief is not necessary for the existence of God either. So, if everyone's personal standard of evidence can possibly be rendered irrational by somebody else not accepting that standard because it's not logical and it doesn't follow logically, does that mean that only irrational standards, i.e. faith, can produce a belief in God? Is anyone feeling mind-fucked right now? I am. Julian, hopefully you'll make a few videos and get your 15-minute cap removed so that you won't have to abbreviate videos for time, and you can just talk at length about something so that we can get the fullness of what you're actually meaning, because I was left with some questions Not that I wouldn't have been anyway, but those were my thoughts on your video. And I guess I didn't go for full refutations of what you were saying because I'm waiting for Charles to chime in. But yeah, that's it.